Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, to kick things off, we're talking about Apple and the iPhone, and as soon as the iPhone got a USB-C port, it seems it's already on the way out. It's being reported that Apple is considering a portless phone. These reports started over on Bloomberg and have since grown a bunch of legs and have been reported in a bunch of places since. And the report initially claims that, Apple had considered a portless version of the iPhone 17 Air, and that the iPhone 17 Air will have a USB-C port, but there's the potential that future versions of the iPhone won't. At this point, it's complete speculation, but also a very interesting thought. I mean, more and more things are wireless, and I'm wondering if Apple does go the wireless, portless version of the iPhone. Will other phone manufacturers follow if it's successful? But I'm curious to hear your thoughts about this one in the comments below. I mean, some people out there were adamant that there was no way that phones were going to lose their headphone jack, and look what happened. I'm very curious to see what happens. I would assume that this is the industry trend, and yes, USB-C ports at some point will no longer exist on phones. I think that could also help in water resistance, but who knows here. Next up, we're talking about the developer of the very popular Atari Jaguar emulator Big Changes, and that developer is Rich Whitehouse. And Rich Whitehouse has an announcement here, and this is more of just a friendly heads up, but maybe something to be very excited about. He says, I can't currently say much about why I'm writing a KI emulator from scratch, which includes a new MIPS3 core, which aims to achieve Dynarec-like speeds without the Dynarec. But I am, and it's alive. If you're a Killer Instinct fan, you might be excited about this one. And speaking about emulator developers, next up here we're talking about Nintendo DS emulation with MelonDS and the developer behind it. It appears the developer behind MelonDS is taking a bit of a hiatus. So over on the MelonDS website, there is a post by the developer, and at a high level here, here's the reason. As far as MelonDS is concerned, there won't be much news from me for a while. I think I need a break from it. Sometimes it just feels good to focus on something else. Unfortunately, I don't know what a while means. It maybe is a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months, maybe a couple of years. I really don't know. But it does seem the developer just needs to focus on something else for a while, which I can see is completely understandable. In the meantime, though, the developer is still working on things, and if you're curious about any of it, like everything we talk about, link is in the description below right at the bottom. You can check out the developer's entire post. Now, I'm hoping the developer does return to MelonDS, and MelonDS is a great Nintendo DS emulator in my opinion. And I'm hoping that development will continue at some point, but we're just going to have to wait and see on that one. And on a quick side note here, fortunately, MelonDS is 100% open source and up on GitHub. So if the developer decides to take an extended absence from the emulator or just stops altogether, which I don't think is going to be the case, but you never know, well, at least the code is available and someone else could potentially pick it up and run with it, which is one of the many, many reasons I'm a huge fan of open source projects. I mean, sometimes these emulators are developed by a single person. If the emulator is closed source and that single person walks away, well, good luck ever finishing that emulator or continuing on with it. But if it is open source, there's always hope. And this is also one of the reasons why I'm a fan of multiple emulators for one system, so we're not just stuck with one in the event there is an issue with it. Next up here, we're talking about Steam. And if you were curious as to what Steam got up to in 2024 and wanted to see all of the information about it all in one place, all in one article, well, you're going to be excited about this news story. Steam has just released Steam Year in Review 2024. It's up on their website, and again, like everything we talk about, link is in the description below right at the bottom. You can check this out and read everything there is to know about Steam in 2024 and what they got up to. I mean, they talk about things they've introduced for the Steam store. They talk about new features they've introduced like game recording. And they talk about tools for developers and even more, even year-over-year data. They say here in 2024, more than 500 new titles exceeded $250,000 in new release revenue, which is up 27% from the year prior, 2023. And also in 2024, more than 200 new titles exceeded $1 million in new release revenue, up 15% from 2023. They talk about the Steam Deck in here and even more. It's a very beefy article. And speaking about the Steam Deck, next up here we're talking about SteamOS, and it seems that big changes are on the way, or are already here if you wanted to check out the preview version 3.7.0 that just dropped. I, for one, am really excited about this update because I think it's going to make SteamOS a whole lot better for gaming and also in desktop mode. They say here they've updated to a newer Arch Linux base. They've updated the Linux kernel to 6.11. They've updated the Mesa Graphics driver base. And desktop mode now ships with KDE Plasma 6.2.5. One of my biggest gripes about Steam desktop mode is that it always felt a little bit outdated. And I think this is really going to help try to make it feel up to date and feel a lot more modern and, well, get with the times. And this is a big one too at the bottom here. Beginnings of support for non-Steam Deck handhelds. So if you are looking for SteamOS on a non-Steam Deck handheld in the future, well, this is a very good step forward. Next up here, if you're a fan of game preservation or Dreamcast games or playing Dreamcast games online, or a fan of 1, 2, or 3 of those things, you're probably going to be a big fan of this news here. And this is more of just a friendly heads up. We talked about Speed Devils being brought back online the other day, and this is the latest from Dreamcast Live and their announcement over on Twitter. Every online multiplayer Dreamcast game released in PAL territories is now back online. That to me is a huge win for game preservation. And speaking about friendly heads ups, next up we're talking about Nintendo 3DS emulation with Azahar. We talked about Azahar just the other day and it seems that development is going along pretty quickly. They've already pushed brand new releases. So the other day we talked about the release candidate 1, which was a pretty big release and had some brand new features for 3DS emulation. And since then they've released release candidate 2 and 3. Now both of these I would say are not as earth-shattering as that very first release, but at the same time here these are important releases. They seem to be having a lot of fixes in both of them. In fact, the latest one here just has one fix, but they fixed a graphical regression. So if you are paying attention to Azahar, just be mindful that this one is being updated very frequently. And speaking about being mindful, next up here we're talking about PlayStation 3 emulation on Android with RPCS3. At the time of filming, the latest release for RPCS3 is Alpha 4. And if you take a look at what's going on behind the scenes, you might be impressed or scared. So the RPCS3 Android development team seems to be incredibly active and busy. I mean, there's a whole bunch of commits here. They're doing a whole bunch of stuff, like implementing custom driver support. RPCS3 Android, in my opinion, is about to get a whole lot better. But the scary part here is, well, this. Remove ARM 8.1-A requirement. I think a lot of people with phones that may not necessarily be powerful enough to really emulate the PS3 well will have access to RPCS3 Android. It's a good thing and also a bad thing because realistically here some of those older devices may be able to run a game or two, but probably nothing AAA, or maybe they could, who knows here. But at the same time, I think a lot of people will see that as RPCS3 supposed to run on their phone very well. And a lot of hardware out there is, well, it's older and not very powerful. So I'm curious to see what happens here. So let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. I'm very curious to hear what you have to say. On one hand, I'm glad they're taking away the safety rails from this and having a lot of people be able to install it on their device. On the other hand, though, I'm thinking that it may open up a world of frustration for people who can't get this up and running well on their phone. Next up here, we're talking about Flycast, and if you're interested in Sega Dreamcast emulation and Flycast, there's a very interesting and very informative post over here on Reddit Flycast, with a lot of really great information. I'm not going to go over everything here, but if you're interested in the Android version of Flycast, if you're interested in DCNet, if you're interested in learning about some probably very helpful links and even more, this post kind of has it all. It's a very good all-in-one place for a whole bunch of great information. Now, we generally talk about a lot of these improvements on the channel, but at the same time here, this is an all-in-one stop for a lot of great stuff. And well, I've said that a bunch, but anyways, here there's stuff about texture packs, there's stuff about widescreen, and even more. Next up, we're talking about Ayaneo, and if you're a fan of gaming tablets and Ayaneo devices, gaming handhelds, you're probably going to be a big fan of this news here. Ayaneo had a couple of very big announcements the other day. One of those is their brand new gaming tablet. It's got a 144p screen at 120 Hz here. It does have a fan in it, and it features a Qualcomm Snapdragon G3 Gen 3. Based on the specs here and the details they've released, they haven't released the release date or the price yet. It does seem that this is not necessarily strictly a gaming tablet. They seem to be trying to make it pretty well rounded. It features a 5 megapixel front-facing camera and a 50 megapixel rear camera. The controller they're designing to go along with their gaming tablet is telescopic, and I think a lot of people are going to be excited about that as well. It seems that it may be high quality. I've got no idea on this one, but I'm very curious to find out. Either way here, if you can pick up the tablet or the controller separately, I think a lot of people may have their eyes on this one. Now, if a tablet isn't your thing, but you'd rather just have it built into one handheld device and also feature the Snapdragon G3 Gen 3, Ayaneo also has you covered. So they also unveiled the brand new Pocket S2. And I think this Pocket S2 looks pretty slick. The Pocket S2 features a 6.3-inch 1440p display. And the overall design in this one, I think, looks really nice. It looks pretty to me. It reminds me a little bit of the Vita, just a little bit. Unfortunately, I don't know a release date or a price for this one either. I'm guessing it's probably not going to be cheap given the chipset in it. Next up, we're talking about the Xbox 360. Now, we talked about the Xbox 360 just the other day when they introduced the brand new soft modding method, Bad Update. And since then, it seems that Bad Update has made significant progress. MVG is reporting that any Xbox 360 can now be hacked with just a USB flash drive. For those who may be unaware, MVG stands for Subscribe to Mr. Sujano, or Modern Vintage Gamer, depending on how you wanted to pronounce that. Anyways, here he goes through the entire thing, explains it in detail, and I do recommend checking out this YouTube video. Again, like everything we talk about, link is in the description below at the bottom. The major downsides I see with Bad Update is the fact that the update is not persistent, which means that every single time the Xbox 360 is powered down, it's got to be reperformed again. And doing the update, the Bad Update, soft mod takes, I don't know, like 10 or 20 minutes, give or take, depending on how quick you are with it. So it could be a frustrating process if you power down and power up your Xbox quite a bit. Either way here, I think it was pretty cool that it was discovered, and I'm very curious to see where it goes next, to see if there's going to be some, I don't know, auto scripting or anything like that to make it even easier. We'll have to wait and see on that one, but I do again recommend checking out MVG's video on it. And last up here, we're talking about Balatro, and if you're a fan of Balatro, you may be a fan of this, you may not be. I, for one, don't normally pre-order something, but I might pre-order this. So there's a brand new Balatro playing card deck, a physical card deck that's about to go into production, and will cost about $16. It seems that shipping on this one is happening in May 2025, and I might be late to the party on this one in realizing that this is available. If you knew about this one, let me know in the comments below, but I'm just discovering this now after a news tip, and well, I am all for it. I'm a huge fan of Balatro, and just having these playing cards will be pretty fun, especially when I'm camping. And on a side note here, last up, kind of as a bonus piece of news, if you're a fan of poker and a fan of, well, indie games, you may be a fan of this brand new game called Hero's Hand. It's a poker-based RPG where you use poker hands to battle. There is a leveling system and even more. And they have just announced the game with an announced trailer over on YouTube. The Steam store page is live for this game. It's set to release sometime in 2026. But the combat mechanics, everything on this one does look interesting overall. I don't know here. Let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. Obviously, it's not Balatro. Is it similar to Balatro? No, not really. But if you like poker, if you like RPGs, and I guess not necessarily puzzles, but randomized stuff, I guess. Let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. I may actually pick this one up, especially if it makes it to mobile. Unfortunately, they haven't listed mobile yet, but it does say Steam, PS5, Xbox, and Nintendo Switch. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. She is upstairs in a box watching the birds. She loves the birds, she loves the spring, and she likes watching stuff, but not talking about it. So I can't get her downstairs. I'm not going to bother her. She's just living life, and she's an older cat, so I let her do her thing. Anyways, let me know your thoughts about anything we talked about in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button. Check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate. Save your state, and I'll see you tomorrow.